Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Casual Chat. I am Patricia.
My name is Aaron.
And we're back.
Yeah, I guess you could say we are. We're back doing this movie. And so I think the reason we're talking about this, why it's come about, is because a long time ago, you did the Amblin trilogy. So you talked about, all the movies that were done by Steven Spielberg, and they didn't do very well in the box office.
No.
But surprisingly enough, they do still keep coming back now and again. And so we just got talking about it, and we decided, well, you and I have never really talked about
No,
it.
we
And
haven't.
a lot of your fans, on Old School Lane have also been talking about the fact that they would like to see these reviews again. So we decided, you know what, let's do it. So last time we did Masters of the Universe 1986, which we'd never done before, but let's do something that we have done before and we're going to do again.
Yeah, so just to do a quick recap. So, almost a decade ago, I did a podcast on the Emblemation trilogy with Jaime Tude and Y-Boy, and we talked about An American Tale, Fava Goes West, We're Back, a Dinosaur Story, and Balto. And we were essentially talking about the animation studio that Steven Spielberg did after the success of working with Don Bluth with An American Tale and The Land Before Time. And if you're interested in checking out, just a brief discussion of those three movies, then go check out that podcast from almost a decade ago. But we're specifically going to be talking about the second one that they did, which is We're Back, a Dinosaur Story from 1993.
Okay, so just to set the scene, I mean, this was 1993. The Little Mermaid had only just come out in 1989, and I think after The Beauty and the Beast had come out in 1991 after that, I think there was a feeling that Disney was starting to kind of get its mojo back again. And, next thing you know, we're right into the Disney Renaissance era, and, they are just flying at this point.
Yeah.
If you remember for all our younger fans, if you remember the revival era that came, when Tangled became a thing, and then also we went into Frozen, and then Frozen Feast basically became a thing, and we're still getting Frozen movies even now to this day.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that, but I think, obviously with, social media wasn't a thing, and, the mediascape, effectively was, you watch, these special, Entertainment Tonight specials, or, you watch these, sneak previews that would, come out about, the next epic Disney movie, and, then, the news broadcast media was just saying, oh, wow, Disney is back, and, everyone, was gossiping about the fact that Disney was starting to do, these fantastic things. By the way, the Black Cauldron was such a disaster, back in the middle of the 80s. Everyone thought Disney was done. It was that bad for them, and then they were basically coming back on the up. But there were those who were just were adamant that Disney was not going to be back on the top of the mountain anymore. The non-Disney movies, were still going to basically make bank and were still going to be a big thing. Don Bluth was still a renegade at this point against the Disney Corporation. Cosgrove Hall were trying to get in with the BFG, earlier back in the 80s. And then we basically got, Warner Brothers also kind of putting in their bots. I think Nickelodeon eventually will start producing movies themselves further along in the 90s. So I think the trajectory of that Disney still wasn't the be all and end all of epic animation. Was that atmosphere was still in the air. So that's the reason why we've got what we're talking about today, which is We're Back, a Dinosaur Story. And I think, Patricia, you can say that, this, was almost kind of like the DreamWorks approach, I guess you could say, because this was based on a book.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so this was based off of a book that was written by Hudson Talbott. And the gist of it is actually very similar, where you have these dinosaurs that were living in the prehistoric times, and then the spaceship comes along, and you have this alien named Vorb who decides to give them brain grain so that they can be intelligent and smart. And so the alien decides to give it over to this Tyrannosaurus Rex. He names him Rex. And there are 5 other dinosaurs that are alongside with him. And they are being tasked of going over to New York City and go to the Museum of Natural History so that they can be able to be alongside with the main person, Dr. Bleeb. And so they land into New York City. They're completely lost. They have no idea where to go. They see the Thanksgiving Day parade. They, basically disguise themselves as parade balloon floats so they can be able to sneak in, so they can be able to go to the museum. They see one of the dinosaur floats thinking that it's another dinosaur. They get caught in it, and then Dr. Bleeb sees them, brings them over to the museum, and the story literally just ends right there. And there was actually a sequel to this book. But we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But Yeah, so Hanna-Barbera was originally going to get the rights to do this book, and they wanted to do an adaptation of it because we talked about this briefly, but Hanna-Barbera were doing their own animated films that were going to be adapted into theaters. We talked about this with Once Upon a Forest, if you remember from a few months back. And so that was when Steven Spielberg and his company Amblimation decided to buy the rights to doing this movie because they saw a lot of promise with it. And especially since, as you know, 1993, this was around the time in which when Steven Spielberg directed Jurassic Park. And yeah, they wanted to go full force with the dinosaur craze because in the 90s it was massive.
Yeah, I mean, like, you had, by the way, you had A Land Before Time, you had Denver the Last Dinosaur, like, there was just so much dinosaur content that was out at the time.
Yeah, there was the ABC sitcom Dinosaurs, so yeah, I mean, dinosaurs were pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, like, it was just Dinomania at this point.
Yeah, it was Dinomania, pretty much, and then Jurassic Park pretty much just blew it out of the water when that movie came out.
Yeah, I remember, like, even Dino from the Flintstones, like, became, like, the front and center thing of the Flintstones at the time, because, the Flintstones itself was basically a world taking place in dinosaurs, which makes absolutely no sense, in real life, but mind you, there's also rumors that, so there's the theory that, the Flintstones take place in a post-apocalyptic universe, so, like, I don't know. But anyway, I digress, we're getting away from this, so...
Yeah, so anyway, but yeah, funny enough, Ron Clements and John Musker, who directed The Little Mermaid and would later on direct films such as Treasure Planet, Hercules, and Moana, they wanted to take a crack at this too, but they were too late because Steven Spielberg had already purchased the rights to it. They wanted to do this movie after they were done with The Little Mermaid, but yeah, when they found out they were too late on it, they decided, okay, we'll work on this Treasure Island in space, and then Jeffrey Katzenberg said, this is stupid. Work on the other project that I'm going to put you into, and so, yeah, go listen to our Moana podcast so you can learn more information about what happened.
Yeah, it's amazing, like, this was such a sought-after product, like, because Jurassic Park was a thing, and, like, various other things, that were dino-related were just becoming the craze, so it looks like, who knows, maybe there've been other, like, dinosaur, projects that probably were, everyone was, like, fighting over at that time, and, but mind you, given the fact that so many people were fighting over this thing, and then we got what we got, well, I think that's probably a bullet well dodged, if you ask me. But, I mean, anyway, let's get further into it, and then we can decide, where we're going to go. So, the problem with the movie is that, obviously, like you said before, the book is such a basic premise. Now, that hasn't stopped DreamWorks, that hasn't stopped, other, movie companies from taking basic, things and turning them into, passable movies, I could say, if not good movies.
Right.
The formula does exist to make something good out of, like, a basic premise.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong about that. Whereabouts Dinosaur Story is not one of those things.
No.
It's not. And, I mean, like, it just goes to the fact that they had to just shove in so much. Like, there needs to be, this, over-the-top villain. There needs to be, like, these crazy characters. They need to, like, expand out the story. They need to put in, like, other characters that weren't necessary. And they had to put in, like, a love story that also was in there as well. And then they had to shoehorn, like, other ships into this as well. Like, in certain bits and pieces, which is like, what are you doing here? Are you doing a comedy? Are you doing an action movie? Are you doing like, are you doing a love story? Are you doing, what are you doing here?
They're essentially throwing in all the tropes that you would see in a 1990s animated film, saying like, oh yeah, those worked for those other movies. We can do the same thing here.
Yeah, but even then, if you put that aside, are we doing a dinosaur movie? Are we doing a time travel movie? Are we doing a, a sci-fi movie? Like, they take all these other tropes as well that were popular at the time, and also they added these things into the movie as well, and it just becomes so convoluted.
Well, I mean, that whole time travel thing was in the original book, but as for like all the additional characters, they were not. So yeah, let's talk about that, shall we? So yeah, our main character is Rex, and very similar to the book, in which he's the focus of the character. If you read the original book, it is talked in first person, where it talks about from his perspective. So yeah, so it starts in the movie where Rex is playing golf, and he sees there is this little bird named Buster who is being just bombarded by his older brothers. And
by the way, just to nick on that, like, the fact that Rex right now is playing golf, like, in the middle of like New York City, that will make less sense the further we go into the movie.
Anyway, so yeah, so Buster wants to run away and join the circus because he is just being bombarded by his older brothers, and he's embarrassed by being hugged by his mom. Isn't that kind of just like hilarious? It's like, like, oh, I'm gonna run away to the circus because I'm being too smothered at home by my mom.
It's like, yeah, like, where any other runaway trope that we have is that the fact that, the child is going through some sort of abuse, or he's going through some sort of troubled time in his life, or like, there's just something that's beyond his control, that, or there's like, he just bored and wants to go out on an adventure. It's not that he's being smothered by his mom. Like, what? Like, that's just not a thing that happens in runaway kid movies, okay?
Anyway, so Rex decides to tell him the story about like, oh, I used to know a boy who wanted to run away to the circus. And so that's when he tells the story that is actually featured in the book, in which he was a wild animal and he used to be hungry all the time by chasing all of these creatures during prehistoric times. And then a spaceship comes along. You have this alien named Vorb who decides to feed him brain grain. In the original book, brain grain was a vitamin. So I guess that maybe, shoving a bunch of pills into dinosaurs, making them smart, probably wasn't a good thing for the kids.
No, probably not. I mean, like, it was advertised as like a cereal, which is kind of like, it's crazy because, I mean, what, did Steven Spielberg just like see like, a breakfast cereal commercial for like kids and decide, I need that in my movie? It's like, really?
Well,
like,
I mean,
no.
It's better than shoving pills into a dinosaur's mouth, that's for sure.
I don't know. I don't think I like the idea that, we need to have some cameo appearance from Count Chocula, so like, shove, chocoholic cereal, whatever the cereal was.
It's brain grain.
Into dinosaurs, but and then once we like go away from that scene, if you could even make your way further into this movie after seeing that, you then get to see like all the other dinosaurs also. So you get to see Elsa, not related to Frozen. You also get to see Dweeb. You get to see Woog as well, and so you get to like. It's funny because they try to have like this coming to terms with the fact that they're now smart and they have to like they have this discussion about the fact that they used to be like wild dinosaurs at that time, and like I get what they're trying to go with this, but I gotta be honest with you, this isn't like the Jurassic Park dinner scene. Like it's not. This is not like Jeff Goldblum going like saying you're standing on the shoulders of gods, like doing that, and like having like an epic discussion about whether it's all right to have like a theme park full of dinosaurs. Like it doesn't even touch that, and it would have been nice to see if they actually kind of like did that. But this is a kids movie. Why would you put that in there? Yeah, like, if anything, it's just wasting time to the fact that, come on, let's get them to New York City, because that's what we're seeing in the trailer. Like, by the way, you saw the trailer multiple times during the time when they were trying to advertise this, by the way. Like, it was on TV all the time.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
It was on TV all the time. They were advertising it on other movies that you were watching in the theaters. It was advertised on magazines. I mean, they wanted to make a huge deal out of this.
And what was the result? We'll get to that at the end of this podcast.
Yeah, and the one thing that always perplexed me, and I even mentioned that in that original podcast over a decade ago, is that okay, when we first see the dinosaurs, they're eating hot dogs. You do realize that half of the dinosaurs are herbivores, right?
Well, I guess they're smart enough now to be able to enjoy meat, or like I don't know, maybe they're vegetarian hot dogs. I don't know. Like,
I mean, they could be vegetarian hot dogs, sure, but I mean, they never
maybe Professor Bright actually dropped by Nathan's before he came over there. Like, they're big enough to be Nathan's hot dogs. I guess
they are actually.
But, so anyway, so despite the fact you've got a bunch of herbivore dinosaurs eating hot dogs, if you want to it's a kids movie, I guess it makes it. This is the thing, once again it goes to the it's for kids kind of thing. They're not going to think about this type of stuff. They're just going to do it because it's funny.
Yeah,
it's just
true.
Who cares if it doesn't make any sense? We do. Because we were kids who were but you're gonna be pointing this out. I mean, seriously, they just think when there was just some media out there, they just thought kids were stupid and not thinking that we're gonna, oh hey, that doesn't really make all that much sense. It just so not pretentious. I mean, it's just so pathetic that condescending that they would think when to do stuff like this that weren't gonna say anything about it. Otherwise, here we are now, it's every decade, talking about it on a podcast. Yeah.
Anyway, so we get introduced to our four characters, in addition to, obviously with Rex. But yeah, you have Elsa, Woog, and Dweeb. And in the original book, there were 6 dinosaurs. And other than Rex and Woog, every other dinosaur has been replaced. And they were completely changed. Originally, the pterodactyl was named Terry. It kind of reminded me of Terry from Pee-wee's Playhouse.
That's one of the reasons why they didn't call it Terry, but it did remind him of Pee-wee's Playhouse. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true, but maybe. And then there was another, character that was the Apatosaurus. I forget what the name was, but they completely changed the names outright. right? So yeah, I guess with these 4 characters, is like you have Elsa, who's the girl, and then you have Dweeb, who's...
And the weird thing about it is she's played by the same actress who plays Lisa Simpson, and because...
No. That's another character.
Oh, I'm talking about, like, Cecilia, aren't I?
Yeah, you're talking about Cecilia. Yeah, we'll get to that later, but yeah. She's essentially, like, the female character, and that's pretty much it. I mean, there was kind of, like, this tease that she had a thing for Rex, but it doesn't go anywhere.
Well, exactly, yeah. Why did they do that? Like, again, that's another thing I complained about in this movie.
Yeah, she was talking about, like, laying eggs or something. Like, no.
That's not how anything works. Yeah. But anyway, let's move on.
And then you have Dweeb, who is kind of like this dorky character, and he's voiced by Charles...
And you couldn't come up with a more intelligent name than Dweeb.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, yeah.
Yeah, he's voiced by Charles Fleischer, a.k.a. Roger Rabbit. And
which is disappointing, really, when you think about it. He downgraded.
Oh, severely. It's like, yeah, it's a waste of a casting, to be quite honest.
Yeah, like, here's the thing about this. And also, I mean, talking about the casting, John Goodman once again is the forefront of a terrible movie, and it's so disappointing. Like, there was the Flintstones movie, and then there was King Ralph, and like it was just John Goodman was being casted as the protagonist of various films. It's just unfortunately the only really good one that really came into my peripheral vision, unfortunately, was Monsters Incorporated, and he was sharing the screen with Billy Crystal at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's infuriating because it kind of gives the impression that John Goodman can't carry a movie on his own, which he probably could, because John Goodman I actually do like as an actor, and also I say to myself this, like, if John Goodman's going to be in a movie and if Jim Broadbent's going to be in a movie and everyone else sucks, then at least I'm going to get some enjoyment out of their performances. But yeah, it's just unfortunate when you put John Goodman at the forefront. Unfortunately, he doesn't get the opportunity to shine. If anything, he kind of gets brought down by how crap everything else is.
Yeah, and then you have Renee Lavant, who plays as Woog, and yeah, he's just constantly hungry. He wants some hot dogs, and yeah, I mean that's pretty much the character in a nutshell. Nothing much to say about, to be quite honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they're just pretty much one note.
How weird is this? Like, the person who plays Professor Bright Eyes in this is
Captain Neweyes.
Captain Neweyes, I do apologize. Is Walter Cronkite.
Yeah, Walter Cronkite, the famous CBS news announcer. Yeah, originally.
And yeah, he does get his catchphrase at the end of the movie.
He does, yes.
And that's the way it is. And that's the way it is.
Originally, Christopher Lloyd was supposed to be Captain Neweyes in the movie, but he was coming down with a severe cold, so he couldn't record his lines. But yeah, I mean, the fact that we have Walter Cronkite, I mean, he was a very famous journalist and news reporter. I mean, he covered everything around from the 60s and 70s on CBS. Like, he talked about the ramifications of the Vietnam War. He talked about so many amazing and heartbreaking, controversial topics in the news. And the fact that this was, from what I understand, this is like one of the very few times in which he performed as a character in a movie. And yeah, I mean, he just comes across as Walter Cronkite.
Yeah, like, it's kind of like, I can't really kind of compare it to Stephen Colbert. I can't really compare it to, like, Jon Stewart, like, when they finally, do, parts in movies and things like that. Like, if anything, like, he's not, like, one of the main characters in this. He's kind of like one of the side characters, kind of like, pushes the plot along, if anything.
Yeah.
So, like, but, I mean, like, here's the thing about this. I mean, like, as much as as terrible this movie is going to be, I mean, like, I can't fault Walter Cronkite's performance. I think he actually is like one of the best parts of this movie.
Yeah.
And
what do you think?
If that exists.
Yeah. What do you think of Jay Leno as Vorb?
I don't really like his performance, really.
Yeah,
like,
his performance is annoying.
It is, yeah. Like, again, like, he's a serial mascot. Like, there's nothing redeemable about, what this character does. And, I just thought that, I thought once again, like, you had Jay Leno, who I think he could, at the time could do, well, this was 90s Jay Leno, by the way. Like, he could deliver some really good lines, and yet this is what you got him doing.
Yeah.
Like, no. Sorry.
Yeah, it's very similar to Charles Fleischer. It's like, what a waste of a cast.
Exactly, yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so Captain Neweyes brought over these dinosaurs so that they can be able to fulfill wishes to children all over the world.
Which is really creepy to think of that, because, like, effectively he says, oh, this is my wish radio where I can listen to people's wishes. Let's be honest with everybody here. You've got a brain reading device that goes across the world and can read the minds of children. I want to just say that to everybody. This man has a device that can read the minds of your children. Tell me that's not disturbing.
Yeah, it wasn't good intentions, of course, because, he's trying to grant children wishes so that they can be happy. And I get that. And yeah, for this particular middle future, there's a whole bunch of kids who wish for dinosaurs to come along. And of course, in the original book, they were just shoved in there for reasons. There was literally no reason on why the dinosaurs were going over to the Museum of Natural History other than meeting up with Dr. Bleeb so that she can be, presenting them forever in her exhibit. I mean, yeah, there's literally no reason. But at least they did try to give a reason, which is that, I'm just trying to grant the wishes of these children who wish for dinosaurs so they can be able to see them. And yeah, I guess it makes a lot of sense in this particular time period in the 90s where kids were just so obsessed with dinosaurs.
Yeah. So, we then finally get to, once we're going through all those characters, we finally get introduced to Louie, who, this is, to be honest with you, if you had to take a kid who was, this rebellious, teenager who, was about, doing his own thing, he would be, just another face in the crowd, because we've seen this character multiple times, and this character would exist all the way up to, when we finally get to the 2000s in Recess, when I compare him to TJ Detweiler, except, he's just not got the intelligence, and he's not got, that edge that, makes TJ, the leader of the pack. If anything, Louie is just, a more toned-down version of this. And, I bet it's unfair to compare a 2000s character to a 90s character, but that's just the way I feel about it. I feel like there's nothing redeeming about Louie in this movie.
Very similar to Buster, the only reason why he ran away so that he could join the circus is because he was smothered by his mom giving him kisses, and so he had to make tracks.
Yeah, I guess you could say... The one thing I thought that would be interesting is that, he looks quite smart, being able to, build and invent things, because he obviously built that, that raft he was, to flow down the Hudson River. Whether it was wise to do that or not, I think it's another matter. But I thought maybe one of the cool things they could have done is that they could have made him. Obviously that'd be another stereotype. They could have just made him I don't have any parents. I'm an orphan. I'm just out by myself. Surviving in the city and things like that. And I'm smart enough to kind of know this, that, and the other, and things like that. And maybe Captain Bright Eyes would basically take him under his wing because he's quite smart at inventing things and things like that. And obviously because he built the Wish Radio, I thought maybe they could have gone down that direction with him, but they didn't. And it's just Louie is just another kid character that has some spunk, and that's about it, really.
Yeah.
There's nothing else really to write about. And then you've got the love interest, which is Cecilia. And by the way, this is performed by the same actress who voices Lisa Simpson. And when she immediately opens her mouth, you think of Lisa Simpson.
Yeah, you do.
So, Cecilia, what do you think of my friends, huh? I think they're swank. First rank, top hat, right down to their tails. Can't you see the difference between earning something honestly and getting it by fraud? I suppose maybe if, no.
She's voiced by Yardley Smith, and yeah, it's Lisa Simpson.
And here's the thing about this is that The Simpsons started in the late 80s, and so I think in 1993, I think obviously The Simpsons was becoming a phenomenon at that point, but I think it was at the point where she could basically play other child characters and not kind of be still linked to Lisa. But she couldn't get away with it today. If she tries to do Lisa Simpson and tried to do another kid character in this, I think everyone would immediately pick up and saying, "Oh, hey, it's Lisa Simpson."
Yeah, I mean, it's not a luxury that a lot of other voice actors who have similar voices can be able to pull. For example, Cree Summer has voiced over 700 characters, and she more or less has a very similar gravelly voice, and but at the same time, she can be able to play around with it. She can be really high pitched when she plays as Elmira, or she can play it a little bit low pitch, very similar to Kita from Atlantis: The Lost Empire.
Well, you look at Nancy Cartwright, and she plays Bart Simpson, but she can also play various other characters as well.
Yeah, she's very diverse.
Yeah, she's a lot more diverse than obviously than Smith is. And the thing is that unfortunately, I think for her performance is that she can't really make it sound anymore. It just, if anything, she kind of takes her Lisa Simpson voice and just kind of says, "Oh well, this kid character can basically go anywhere." It's no, that's not the way that it works.
Yeah.
And immediately you kind of you just feel like you're watching The Simpsons when you're listening to her play this character, which isn't great when you're supposed to be the biggest hit on television.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you something, because I did mention this in my first podcast that these characters were not in the book whatsoever.
No, they weren't.
But I argue that they should have had Cecilia as the main character because she's the one who's actually going through a lot more dramatic turmoil compared to Louie. You know, she goes through this traumatic thing where she's basically alone, and it's Thanksgiving, so that's around the time of period where, you know, she should be with her family. But,
yeah,
you know,
I mean,
they're
like,
not around.
the one thing they could have done, actually, that's a good point. Like, you know, Louie's kind of wasted, you know, is not needed in this movie at all, if you really think about it. Like,
Yeah.
you know, they could have, like, you know, completely written him out of the movie, and then said, okay, let's focus on Cecilia. And so she's, like, in the house all by herself. She's wondering, like, you know, oh, well, you know, I'm lonely. I really want to, you know, find some company. She's going to leave the house and, like, leave. Maybe she's, like, stopped from leaving the house because, you know, like, maybe the maid or, like, you know, the butler or whatever, like, you know, she keeps a good eye on her. And, like, you know, maybe they could have added a butler character in there and just replaced Louie. And, like, then it's like, you know, hey, maybe they probably got Rowan Atkinson probably to play this, like, you know, be like Zazu, like, you know, in The Lion King for Cecilia. Like, you know, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to hear. My parents gave me straight instructions that you should stay in this house. And then somehow, like, Cecilia escapes the house. Like, you know, I don't know. She upscales down the building or something like that. And then, like, you know, because she wants to, like, check out, like, you know, because, you know, her parents aren't around, you know, when a butler doesn't make the rules. So, like, you know, she can go off and do whatever she wants. She could have the spunk.
Yeah.
Like, you know, she could replace Louie in this. She could be both characters.
Yeah,
she could be, like, you know, the lonely, you know, daughter, and, you know, could have been, like, you know, the person who actually has a bit of streetwise because she sneaks out the house because the parents aren't there to enforce the rules.
Yeah, I think that it would have made a lot more sense to have it more streamlined because you would only have one character to focus with, and she would have the personality of both characters. You know, she would be a little bit street smart, and she would be a little bit more spunky and rebellious, but at the same time, she's really lonely, and she is, you know, feeling isolated because her parents are not around. So yeah, I mean, I would argue get rid of Louie, have Cecilia, combine both of the personalities, and there you go. You could have had a...
I don't know if you discussed this in the last podcast. You know, unfortunately, everybody, I don't get a chance to, like, you know, listen to virtually everything on YouTube. But, like, I mean, the one thing I would have probably done in this situation is, I mean, you would have combined the two characters, but I think I would have gone in a different direction. I would have done Cecilia +1. So I would have said, okay, well, here's the butler character, and, like, you know, here's, like, he's kind of like Jiminy Cricket, who's, like, you know, for Pinocchio. So Cecilia would basically be our Pinocchio in the situation. Then you'd have the butler character that would basically be like the Jiminy Cricket, and, like, you say, well, you shouldn't really do that if I were you, and you know, I think you should be careful of the consequences that you do. And but then obviously, you know, Cecilia would just ignore all of that, and she would just go off and be a rebellious self, and you know, but feeling lonely at the same time. So yeah, I mean, like, I would have added, like, you know, I wouldn't have added Louie. I think, you know, again, I would have probably have put someone in the house that would have, like, you know, tried to enforce the rules but can't because the parents aren't there to enforce it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because, you know, the butler character isn't the parent, so, like, that's probably the way I would have gone about it. Really.
Okay, that's an interesting. That's actually really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, let's continue on with the movie. So yeah, so Louie and Cecilia are in this together, and they're trying to figure out a way so that they can be able to have the dinosaurs blend into New York City without it sticking out like a sore thumb.
Well, now that we're at this point, keep this in mind. Like, you know, let's just review where we are in this movie. We've given the dinosaurs brain gain. We've sent them to the future. We've, you know, added them into. By the way that they were just dumped into New York. You think, like, oh yeah, let's just drive them over to the museum. Why not just drop them off at the museum and, like, you know, save yourself, like, you know, a whole movie? Like, you know, like, so yeah, I kind of, like, question Captain Brightseyes, you know, logic in, like, you know, just dumping them in New York City and expecting them to find their own way there. You know what I mean? So, I mean, like, that was stupid. I mean, and then have, like, you know, the curator of the museum, like, you know, running around the city trying to figure out where on earth they've gone.
Oh yeah, so we need to talk about that. So Dr. Bleeb, yeah, she is voiced by Julia Child. Can you believe that? Julia Child, the famous chef who was able to inspire a whole generation of cooks and chefs from all over the world, especially with America, where at the time in which when she came along, American housewives wanted to find the quickest way of making dinner without it having to stand for hours in the stove. That was when TV dinners became really popular. That was a lot of, like, instant foods became really popular. And so Julia Child changed all of that when she released her groundbreaking cookbook. And she introduced French cuisine to American households. And so you have her, one of the biggest and most influential chefs in America, playing as this museum curator who is nearsighted trying to look for the dinosaurs.
Yeah, and here she was in this movie cooking a goose. just yeah. Sorry, everybody. But yeah, so but I mean, there's nothing really, about this doctor. It's like, oh, she can't see all that well, and she just goes around putting up these posters, and she doesn't really do much in this movie except open the door, at the very end of the movie, and then say, oh, well, we're gonna have you as the exhibit, and that's about it, really. That's all a character does.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I would have made it a bit more compelling. She make it oh, I'm worried about where all they've gone and everything like that. I've not seen them yet or things like that. But you don't get any of that. If anything, she's just kind of is just a comic relief side character that just kind of comes onto the screen. She kind of reminds me. Remember the Dover Boys, thing, and you get the sailor who comes in from the merry month of May. Music coming online. She's kind of like that. She's kind of comes on the screen and then disappears again.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, once again, here's the thing about this. We how many times have we talked about wasted characters in this movie? Dr. Bleeb, Louie, other characters that we're going to, meet along the lines. What are they doing here? It's starting to become a waste paper basket for characters that could have been in other movies but then got put into this.
Well, I mean, Dr. Bleeb was in the original book. That is true, and yeah, very similar to the book. It's just her getting to the dinosaurs and displaying them in the Museum of Natural History.
But she doesn't even do that. She opens, they come to her and she opens the door, and that's all that she does. She doesn't actually go and find them.
Yeah.
So they didn't even go stay faithful to the book in that respect. And the book's premise is so simple.
Yeah, it's very short, too.
Yeah, good grief.
Anyway,
this is Masters of the Universe all over again, isn't it?
It is.
I think that's the reason why we're reviewing this. Hey, everybody, here's some movies that were simple concepts in, their original format, and here's how they made them really convolutedly bad. I mean, that's probably the theme of this month.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, now we finally got over to the Thanksgiving Day parade, which, is actually funny. There's not a lot of animated films that take place in Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's funny because you and I have talked about this, in various other podcasts. We don't see many Thanksgiving movies.
Yeah,
well, this
don't.
is probably the reason why. Oh, good grief.
Anyway, so yeah, let's get into the Thanksgiving parade. So yeah, I mean, it's I do like the little touches that they were able to include, famous...
Woody Woodpecker,
yeah,
and
Woody
Spider-Man, and Snoopy, things like that. Those are the things that you should see, in the Thanksgiving parade.
Yeah.
But then we get the musical number, which just kind of comes out of nowhere. Do you know what would be interesting, though, is that, while, the brain gain is, they've taken it at the very interesting... It would have been interesting to see, to explain to the audience, this is what the brain gain is doing. As they are absorbing more information and they're absorbing more things around them, they are starting to, become more intelligent of the fact that they're learning things like that. Kind of like the Terminator does. When they flip the switch in Terminator 2, and then all of a sudden he starts learning things, learning how to smile, learning how to make jokes, learning how to interact with the human beings, learning how to do other things outside of the control of Cyberdyne. All of that was quite interesting. They could have done this with the dinosaurs, where it's now they've got intelligence and they can form their own opinions, form their own feels, form their own kind of personalities and things like that. They could have made them all radically different, but instead they kind of made this they made this kind of this one thing that okay, we're dinosaurs and we talk, and that's about it. But they didn't really elaborate more than that. And it would have been more interesting if they said, oh wow, Rex is getting so much more intelligence to the fact that he can now start forming rhythms and start thinking about lyrics and things like that. And that's how we get into the song number. But this song number just comes out of nowhere with no explanation.
Yeah, it's true. It literally comes out of nowhere. The only reason why he sings is because he's seen all the kids who are wishing that the dinosaurs were real because they think that they're robots. And so that's when he starts singing the only song that's in this movie, by the way. It's yeah. What do we say about it?
Yeah, I mean, the Return Back the Clock is, obviously it is just, a generic, music piece, I think, and it's just in there to basically, oh hey, we need a song number in this movie. I mean, here it is. And then, obviously, we get to the point where it's the kids realize, oh, wait, they're real, and then everyone starts panicking. So, yeah.
By the way, good callback to the book, because that actually did happen, where there was a actual dinosaur that was part of the Thanksgiving Day parade, and Rex approaches it, he shakes it, the balloon pops, and then it's revealed that they are actually real. So, yeah, Good callback. And yeah, then we have this huge chase scene, which pretty much just goes nowhere.
It's almost like, it's almost like Animaniacs in a way. Like they just do like all these like your cartoon chase scenes that you've probably seen in cartoon shows, multiple times before, and it doesn't really go anywhere. And if anything, it's just used as a device to kind of like split up, Louie and Cecelia, away from the dinosaurs, and they go off and fall into Professor Screweyes' circus, and then they have to go chasing after them. And that's basically where we get to. We meet Professor Screweyes, which are antagonists of the movie, but it's not in the book.
No, he's not in the book whatsoever. No, there is no antagonist whatsoever.
It's funny because, you look at him, it's like, why has he got a screw for an eye? And by the way, this is explained in the deleted scene. So if you want to go explain about the crows and everything like that, there is a deleted scene that Patricia showed me. I mean, it doesn't really do much for me, but maybe I do something for you. But it's like, what? After the crow pecked out his eye, it was kind of like, what am I going to replace it with? Oh, here's a screw on the floor, and just screws it into his eye. Like, is that how it all came about? He's like, he was just in the tool shed one day and said, well, I need something. Oh, this screw will do. It just looks so stupid. I know it's supposed to be serious and it's supposed to be kind of like, it's supposed to make him kind of look, intimidating and stuff like that. But I just kind of look at it like, this guy's got a screw in his eye. Take him to a doctor, for crying out loud. Get him some help. The thing's probably infected. That's just how I look at it every time I see Professor Screweyes. It's like, this guy needs medical attention ASAP.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that John Malkovich was originally supposed to play the character, but there was a lot of disagreements that were going on behind the scenes that they basically let him leave the project.
I think that's one thing also. I think we're going to lead towards the end of the podcast, but I think we might mention it now. This thing went through production hell multiple times. I think probably Spawn has probably been seeing more hells, or probably less hells than I should say that. Maybe like a Dinosaur Stories production probably saw. But it was a horrendous story. Probably that in itself probably could be a documentary for another time.
That would be really interesting. Yeah, I mean, they've done documentaries about movies that were disasters and the production of what happened. I mean, I'm surprised that they haven't touched this.
I'm surprised they managed to keep John Goodman in. I probably imagine he would be the one that less to put up with BS going on behind the scenes. I imagine he'd probably walk away as well, but I guess not.
Anyway, but yeah, so you have Professor Screweyes, and yeah, he essentially has this circus that is targeted on scaring people. And yeah, he's actually Captain Neweyes' brother. And Captain Neweyes in the beginning of the movie warns the dinosaurs to stay away from him because of he's cruel, he's insane, he's evil, and he's somebody that you should not mess with.
Yeah, but somehow he's managed to retain the services of a clown played by Martin Short. That doesn't make any sense. Like he said, I'm going to keep you around, and if you make me laugh, I'll make you part of my show. Well, why would you keep this guy, though, and, do all this stuff? I think a better explanation would be that Professor Screweyes, decided that he wanted to scare a lot of people, and so, there was the circus that, everyone was, beloved to go and watch. So what he did was he paid a lot of money, and he bought the circus, and now he's turned it into this terrifying horror show. And that, is now what he's using to scare everybody in New York City, effectively, because he could have used it as a trap, saying like, oh hey, here's this nice little circus that everyone goes walks into, and then all of a sudden he just scares everybody and then scares them out of their wits.
I actually have a complaint about that, which we'll get to later.
Okay.
So we have Louie and Cecelia. They finally approach Professor Screweyes, saying we want to join the circus, and so then he brings in the contract, which is completely blank, and they sign it with their own blood.
Yeah, that was kind of morbid, really, when looking at that, and so in fact, a lot of there's probably more blood in this movie than probably most kids movies probably have, because Screweyes stabs Louie with a pen, and then mind you, they do that on screen for Louie, but yet when Cecilia pulls out one of her hairpins and breaks her own finger, apparently that's not to be shown on. She has to do that off camera.
Yeah.
Some strange reason. Okay, I don't know why one can be on camera and the other one can't. I don't understand that.
I don't know.
But then when Professor Screweyes is he's about to get eaten by the dinosaur, and he's about to he pokes his finger on the teeth and it starts bleeding. He's like, yeah, there's a lot of blood in this movie. It just is. I thought that was preluding to the fact that there's going to be a bloody mess at the very end of it. But I don't know. I digress. Yeah, they sign these contracts, and then the dinosaurs are too late. They say, oh, they're now going to be there, but if you become monsters for me, then obviously I'll let the kids go. And then he introduces the not the wish radio, it's the nightmare radio or whatever it's called.
The fright radio.
The fright radio. I mean, you want to look at it, it's like in his spare time he probably uses it to be the Wizard of Oz, just looking at it.
Okay, now I brought this up in the original podcast, but I have a major complaint with this. So, I want you to tell me this, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
When they play the fears of, what people are afraid of, who is the one saying these fears?
He plays the radio, like all these. It's kind of the same as when the bubbles come out of the wish radio, like all these kids come out.
Exactly. There you go. That was what I was looking for. They're kids. So yeah, he sees the fears of kids saying, I am afraid of monsters. Yeah. Now, who goes to see the circus?
Well, it's the people who want to be scared.
More specifically, how old are they?
Yeah, they're probably in there, they're past college, I think, at this point.
Yeah, they're adults, exactly. So okay, let me get this straight. If Professor Screweyes wants to scare kids with monsters, why is he targeting adults? Adults are not afraid of monsters. If anything, adults love monsters.
That's my complaint. The fact that, he probably should have been it's not a scary circus. It's he's bought a regular circus and he's using it as a honey trap to bring people in, and then after that he scares the shit out of them, and then they go running away.
Exactly.
Sorry, you might have to edit that out. But
no, you're fine. Anyway, but yeah, not one child other than Louie and Cecelia go to the circus. They're all adults.
Yeah.
Why is Professor Screweyes focusing on kids' fears when adults go to his circus?
The only thing I could really think of is maybe the fright radio is targeting the inner childs of these adults, and that's the reason why he can he wants to scare people. But yeah, I do take your point. I mean, for me, it would have been a case of he bought a regular circus, then turned it into a trap, kind of what those glowfish do, when with that, he would have probably done that with the circus, and so it is a really evil scheme to scare people, because that's what he likes to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, none of that makes sense. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make any sense. So the main fear that is on the fright radio is monsters, and so
which just in a way kind of doesn't make sense in itself, because these guys aren't monsters; they're dinosaurs.
Yeah, they're dinosaurs.
Yeah, I mean, if they were monsters, I mean, you kind of more they would look like monsters.
Yeah, it would be like the boogeyman, or it'll be the monster under your bed, or something like that. But no, they're just dinosaurs. Creatures that actually existed millions of years ago.
Yeah, it's just this. They agree in exchange to tear up the contracts for, Louie and Cecelia, that they would take the brain drain, that is the antidote to brain gain, and so then they take the stuff. By the way, they edited out that they cut out that scene to say them changing back into which is kind of weird, really, because in the Pound Puppies movie they didn't edit out the fact that they turned the dogs evil, if you remember that scene. But so that was okay, but it's not okay for in Way Back a Dinosaur Story to keep in the scene where they turn the dinosaurs back.
Yeah, and also in Secret of Nim, when when Nim grabs the mice to experiment on them, you
see them injected with things like that.
Yeah, you see them injected with the syringe, and
but being stabbed with pens and and hairpins, and also grabbing dinosaur teeth and bleeding out. Apparently, that's all acceptable. But watching these dinosaurs change back to what they were when we saw them already in the beginning of the movie, that's too much for kids, apparently.
Yeah, apparently a lot of kids got frightened.
But this is the thing about this, even if they did put that scene in, we've not had enough time to kind of get really attached to our characters at that point, because that's one thing I was going to bring up with you before we kind of moved on to everything else. This movie moves too quickly. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Immediately, where the dinosaurs are, given the brain gain, immediately we're thrown into the future. Immediately we meet Louie. Immediately we meet Cecilia. Immediately, this movie is too scared to be bored for, just a couple of minutes to slow down and, explain what's going on. We immediately have to, move from one thing to another, and it's just going and going and going and going, and it doesn't take a breath You've noticed that?
I have noticed
yeah,
that.
I think that's the reason why we were kind of like we were exhausted after watching this movie. It's like this thing moves far too quickly.
Yeah.
And like they want to cram in so much as possible. And you and I have like spent most of this podcast, what about 45 minutes talking about stuff that could be removed from the movie, and given a chance to have some breathing space to concentrate on some other characters.
Yeah.
But instead, we're putting in scenes there was that scene about that kid who wanted that hat. How's that drive the story? She just gets the hat and that's it.
Yeah, that's it. That's literally
done by the time we got into the second act. There's nothing redeeming going into the rest of the movie for that. Why? We got story to do.
We got story to do. We got people to see. We got things to explain.
Yeah, I don't think I'll give it credit, I guess. At least it slows down enough to put in the irrelevant stories in this movie, but that's not saying much. Oh, good grief.
Anyway, so the next day, Louie and Cecelia meet up with Stubbs the Clown, that's his name, who's voiced by Martin Short. And once again, originally he was supposed to play by another character, but then things behind the scenes got pretty messy. He was originally supposed to be voiced by Mickey Rooney, and then there was a lot of things going on in the recording session, and he was replaced.
Yeah, and here's the thing about this. Stubbs is once again another character who doesn't really need to exist in this place.
No, again, he wasn't in the book.
If anything, this is the thing, but he looks like he's just there. He's just oh well, I'm here until Screweyes will eventually put me into his show because I'll make him laugh, and he's just hanging on to that. But then he quits anyway and gives him his last paycheck at the very end of the movie. So him staying there is absolutely pointless. He could have left at any time.
Yeah, that's true. And going into the idea that you had earlier about Screweyes buying a circus or something. I mean, Stubbs even mentions earlier that he was part of another circus. Maybe that circus that he was once a part of was the circus that eventually Screweyes bought.
Well, that wasn't explained.
No, that wasn't.
It's just he happens to be at another circus, but then he joined this one.
Yeah.
And it said, well, I mean, why would you join this circus? Why did you do it? there's no explanation.
Yeah.
Why would he join it? Why would he get a worse job than he had when he was at another circus? It would have made more sense. It was Screweyes walked in, he had a load of money from money laundering or whatever, he was doing something evil, and then decided to buy the circus because he wanted to scare everybody. He wanted to set up this trap to scare loads of kids and scare loads of adults or whatever he wanted to do. And then Stubbs just happened to be part of the circus at the time, and he bought out his deal, and therefore that's the reason why Stubbs is there, because he had no choice. Stubbs said he signed a contract to be part of the circus for how many years, but then Screweyes bought it, and now he's his boss, and he can't get out of it. And then, if anything, Louie and Cecelia could stick around and say, because, besides rescuing the dinosaurs, I mean, they could, one thing they could have also done on the side is okay, Stubbs, if you help us, we'll get you out of your contract and we'll set you free.
Yeah, that would have been a good idea.
Because the one thing that Stubbs could have been an interesting character in this is that, he's between, his loyalty is to Screweyes because, he doesn't want to get punished, because he's still part of this, circus, and the Screweyes could do something horrible to him if he wanted to, or he could help these kids out to get these dinosaurs free, and he could be set free, and so he could have that conflict of oh, I don't know if I want to trust these kids or not. I don't want to trust these dinosaurs because I've only just met them, but whether it's Screweyes, okay, he treats me terribly, but he's my only way of surviving in life. They could have done an interesting conflict with that, but no, he's just a side comic character that doesn't really need. Wasn't originally part of the original story, and just doesn't seem to be relevant to this either at all.
Nope, not at all. The only reason
Once again, another wasted. What? That's 3 now. Wait, 3 wasted characters.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and one of them was part of the original story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or it's kind of sad, actually.
I know, it is sad. It makes no sense.
Anyway, so now we get into the circus performance, and it just goes all wacky with the spooks.
Do you know what's I hate about this? The music. It's the freaking music. This is something they could have done with, I really wish they either got White Zombie, or they got, something, they got somebody, to play, death metal, or, play something, which would really, horrific, so like say, to escalate what you're seeing on the screen. But if anything, it just sounds like, it sounds like something silly is going on.
Yeah,
like the
but
music makes no sense of all of this.
Circus.
Exactly, but the idea is that it's like a psycho circus. So like kids could be playing, kids could come out and start playing Psycho Circus or something like that. Like they could have made it like it's kind of like scary, but it's kind of cool at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they could have made it like that, but instead they just made it all silly and ridiculous. Like this isn't scary. It's just stupid. What are all these grown adults doing? With all this stuff. Like there was nothing there redeemable about it whatsoever.
I mean, yeah, it's
this is Screweyes' master plan to scare as many people as possible. You suck. I'm sorry, Screweyes, you suck. Like that's not the scariest thing I've ever seen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean, like, it is true that adults do go out of their way to find something scary. That's why they watch horror movies. That's why they participate in a lot of those escape rooms. That's why they go over to those haunted houses on Halloween every year.
The thing there that Screweyes has put in front of us is actually scary. I mean, seriously, Screweyes, grow up. Go to New York General and get that screw out of your head.
Yeah, I mean, even Universal Studios, whenever that they do their Halloween horror nights, they actually do have like these particular escape rooms where have like actual scary monsters like jumping out at you and scaring you, like zombies and vampires and all that kind of stuff. And adults absolutely love them. That's why they go there every year. That's why that's one of the highest rated amount of tickets that are sold at that particular time period, because people just love being scared and people love monsters. And the fact that Screweyes thinks that this is scaring them and he's actually acting super evil doing it, it's like, no. People embrace stuff like this. They don't find it scary for the sake of fear. They find it fun.
It's like I don't know.
And again, you're targeting adults. Shouldn't you be targeting children?
Yeah, even mind you, like all these adults that goes to this circus, I question, what they're like. It's
yeah, a lot of them are weird.
Do you know what would be fun? What if like they decided to just go all out? It's like, hey, we're gonna make this the scariest, zaniest, and just craziest thing that's just out there. Like, we're gonna bring in Kiss to like play some metal. We're gonna bring the Insane Clown Posse to like, rap the whole thing, like talk about like, how evil, the Great Malenko is and things like that. We're gonna bring in like, death metal and things like that, and like, make it sound like really super scary and just really like, grunge and things like that. Make it sort of like really scary, but make it cool at the same time. On Rob Zombie, like I was saying before, stuff like that would have made it great, but they didn't. Like, if anything, it just made it goofy. It's just like, this is Disney's like this is like bad. This is like, Disney's like, what would Walt do era, kind of like, with the way that they would make this scary. Like, it's just like, yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
So there's nothing redeeming about that scene whatsoever. And then we get the dinosaurs coming out, and Screweyes controls them with his eye, and then but then the thing, the crows, decide to surround the technical area and then set the flares off, and then that's breaks the spell of like the dinosaurs being controlled by Screweyes. So Rex grabs one of them, he's about to eat him, and then Louie like gives like this kind of like passionate piece saying, oh, don't act like a tough guy because you're scared and stuff like that. Dude, you left because your mother was smothering you.
Yes.
Like, that's the reason why you left. Not because you were a tough guy, or like because you were like, you're scared, or like, things like that. Like, so his whole emotional speech just kind of falls flat because like, that wasn't his motivation, at the very beginning of the movie.
No, he ran away because he was being smothered at home by his mom.
Yeah.
And
I laughed at like the fact that Cecilia was there, like said, claps to her things like, "Don't let bad happen."
Don't let bad happen.
Oh, like well, okay. Do you just want him to like kind of like just chew on him a little bit and then like spit him out? I don't like just kind of like you could have said, yeah, please don't let him get killed or anything like that. Like please save his life if he does it. So, this works apparently. So, like, apparently this has the same logic as Pound Puppies, the movie, apparently, where you just have to hug the dinosaur in order for it to stop being, to reverse the brain drain, apparently. So,
and also the Care Bears, it's like,
I mean, it kind of makes sense of the fact that, Screweyes would make brain drain, but then obviously it's like, it's some sort of like knockoff product that only like temporarily, like, gets rid of like the problems. And then you see, like, in, further shots that, there's buckets of brain drain still there. So obviously there's still still feeding him the brain drain as it goes on. So the brain gain doesn't necessarily go away. It just kind of like just dampens the effect.
Yeah, I mean, even though that it's supposed to be the antidote, it's not a very effective antidote.
No, it's not. But I mean, like you can say that about like Professor Screweyes. Like he was then again this goofy circus supposed to be scary, and like it looks absolutely stupid. And then like you got all this zany music going on. Like it's like that sounds more comedic than it does scary. It's like I don't think you can blame. Why should we be surprised that Professor Screweyes would basically make a product that sucks? Because everything that he does sucks.
It does suck.
Everything he does, he's Professor Suckeyes in my opinion.
God. Anyway, but yeah, so
there's something else he can suck as well. As far as I'm
okay,
sure. Okay, we're leaving it that side.
You're done.
All right.
All right. So yeah, the dinosaurs are back to normal, and then finally Captain Neweyes comes along and saves the day. It's like, where have you been?
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh yeah, nice of you to turn up when all the stuff's gone down. Like, it's just he said, oh, the only reason I decided to come here is because I heard you on my Wish radio. It's like, where have you been this entire freaking time? Weren't you concerned with the fact that the dinosaurs are running amok in New York City, and like the idea was that your Wish radio was going to send them over to the Museum of Natural History, and then this all happens. You're mostly responsible for all the stuff that's currently happening right now. You took a simple story and then turned it into this. Like, your character motivation is awful. And stop reading kids' minds. It's creepy. It's just, so that, rubs me the wrong way, all that hell. And like, we then get this really weird thing where, like, it's, Martin Short's character, Stubbs, just starts doing this whole bit where, like, he's gonna say, "Oh, I'm gone, I'm over and out ski," things like that, and then she says, "That's comedy," and then leaves.
Yeah.
Like, it's just showing that he could have left at any freaking time, and he wasn't like under this, any particular pressure from Screweyes whatsoever. Like, what were you doing here? Get lost. And then, for some reason, like, Neweyes decides to say to his brother, "Oh, do you want to change your ways and come with us?" And he goes, "Never." It's like that was ever going to work. Like, he's done, bro has done nothing to, like, convince his brother that what his direction of character is wrong or anything like that. He's done nothing whatsoever. He just flat out asks, is he going to change his ways? Which clearly he's not going to. And then he's just going to go. And then just to top it off, we finally get probably the most famous scene, I guess you could say, in Way Back a Dinosaur Story, and that's when all the crows go onto him, he disappears, and apparently that's the end of Screweyes.
Yeah, he's dead.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess they say, "Oh, he's dead," but I think if they made a Way Back a Dinosaur Story 2, I think he probably would have come back, I guess, at that point.
Maybe.
But maybe, because I think they kind of left it open-ended, like, what happened to him. Like, they say, "Oh, he got eaten by the crows." It's like, well, no, the crows just kind of just landed on him, and then he just disappeared. If anything, he kind of, like, disappeared the same way Soul Blighter kind of disappears in Myth 2. He's not dead, he just has this magical way to disappear by using crows.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the way I saw it, anyway. But that's just me.
Yeah. And now, finally, they were able to go over to the museum. Dr. Bleeb welcomes them in, and yeah, I mean, she talks about that, while the parents are off and away, we're gonna bring you into this room with the dinosaurs, and you get to interact with them.
Yeah, and also, the parents will be none the wiser, so, like, because we'll only make it children only, and I just have to say that I really question, the morality of all of this right now. Like, this whole thing of, like, giving kids real-life dinosaurs to interact with without any parental supervision, or, like, I can just see this being an insurance disaster at this point. I'm sure there's a kid that's probably in there for, after this whole thing that ended up getting crushed, and that National History Museum got sued out of existence.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
You can probably tell we've not enjoyed this movie. No, we have not.
Yeah, I saw this movie for the first time almost a decade ago after I did that podcast, and my thoughts are still exactly the same.
Well, my thoughts are probably even worse after seeing it now that I've a chance. Because when I saw it, I was a kid, and now that I've seen it again, like, I probably think even worse of it then than I probably thought of it now.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
There's just so much wrong with it. Oh my god. I can understand. You definitely know that this movie has gone through production hell because of just how awful it's ended up turning out to be. Once again, this is another movie, like we talked about here, like Masters of the Universe 1987. This is another movie where they took a simple premise, and they absolutely made an absolute dog's dinner of it. And it's just, there's nothing redeeming about, going through this experience again. Like, I mean, the only good things I could basically say about it is that Walter Cronkite actually does do a good, like, kind of like fatherly kind of like voice for, like, Captain Neweyes, and I mean, one thing I would say as well, like, on top of, like, the story sucking, the characters not being all that enjoyable, the fact that they could have took out some characters and added some better characters in. They had all this opportunity to do like all this good stuff. On top of all of that, I mean, the animation isn't all that great either. Like, compared to what Disney was doing at the time, The Little Mermaid, they done 4K restorations of The Little Mermaid, and it looks fantastic. You can't do a restoration of Way Back a Dinosaur Story. It looks terrible. Like, when we saw this, like, in high definition, like, as high as it'll go, and it still looks like you're not going to miss standard definition if you rented it out for that kind of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, again, there's nothing. There's in the music, in the animation, in the characters, in the story, like, it's just wrong how this is all turned out.
Yeah.
And there's very little to that this movie has to offer in this, and it's so sad because I like John Goodman a lot because he does a really good job as Sully in Monsters Incorporated. He was really good in Roseanne, if you remember as well. Like, he
was also good in Emperor's New Groove.
In Emperor's New Groove as well. Yeah, we liked him as Tatcha in that movie as well. He does some really good work, John Goodman. And unfortunately, when you put him at the front, when you get things like Way Back a Dinosaur Story, the Flintstones, and the King Ralph, it's just like it just sucks. It just sucks. Yeah, that's what makes me feel sad about all this. It's another movie that the John Goodman, he can do good work, but then they put him in this really awful situation and he just sucks. This movie sucks.
Anyway, and the fact that they were, there was a sequel to the book that came out a few years later, and it would have been an interesting premise. So essentially that the dinosaurs were being called into California because they were going to star in a Hollywood feature, and Rex was thinking, oh wow, I'm going to be a star, but no, it's actually one of the other dinosaurs that's the star, and he's just like a side character who gets trapped into the pits of La Brea, and then he gets sucked in, and then he goes through this weird trippy moment where he sees himself as like the bad guy of just taking the star power out of the other dinosaur who wanted to be the star, and then he realized how wrong he was, and then he wakes up, and then that's pretty much it. So yeah, even that has a less of a story material than the original book, and yeah, I mean, I guess you couldn't really work on that too much, but yeah, we were actually talking about this as soon as we were done with the movie, but I mean, if there was another opportunity to adapt this book, I mean, which animation studio do you think could have, salvaged this?
DreamWorks. I think DreamWorks could have done it, and I think if they picked it up, and I think if Katzenberg was in charge, and I think if they brought in the right people to do this, if they added the right characters, if they decided to do a refresh of the entire story. I mean, here's the thing about this. I mean, like, this might sound very strange, but I think if they did, I mean, right now we're gonna have Masters of the Universe, done again in 2026.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if they announced, we're gonna do another movie of Way Back a Dinosaur Story. Like, I mean, I would like to say that if DreamWorks did it, I think they probably could have salvaged this a little bit, yeah. Nickelodeon probably would have done a really bad job of it, I think. Paramount probably would have done a bad job of it. Pixar wouldn't touch it. I don't think Disney would have done it any justice either. I think Disney did it. I think it'll end up being kind of like Chicken Little. So, like, I think... out of everyone, I think, in this, I mean, to be fair, Sony Animation potentially could do something with it.
Maybe.
I think, or mind you, if you want to go really wildcard with it, I mean, imagine if Studio Ghibli did it. Like, I don't think Miyazaki will want to do it, but...
No, Miyazaki or Takahata at the time when he was alive, I don't think would have touched this.
No, I don't think it would have either, but...
And besides, if you were to think about Miyazaki, I mean, he would think of, like much more calmer and mellower stories with bigger worlds and, like a little bit more quieter side stories. That's why he originally wanted to do Pippi Longstocking, but that never got off the ground. I mean, he's into the more quieter stuff. Like, something like We're Back would have been the complete opposite of what he would have been known for.
Yeah, I just think that's the only movie company I think I know that could probably done a good, job of We're Back. I think probably would have been DreamWorks. That's the only one I could think of.
Okay.
But yeah, I think everybody else probably either would have done it as a cash grab, done it as a, probably would have done it as like a lesser project. And I think everybody else, would say, well, We're Back sounds nice, but we don't really want to do a movie. We want to do a TV series. Like, I can hear those conversations going on. So, but I don't think, given how poorly received it was, and the fact that, here's the thing about this, He-Man and Masters of the Universe has nostalgia factor. They have a reason to keep coming back again and again and again because, they've got those people who are fans of this. I don't know anybody who's a fan of Way Back a Dinosaur Story.
Yeah, out of the Emblemation trilogy, this is hands down the worst one.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. There's still some people who still fondly remember Five Goes West, and Balto has become a cult classic. We're Back is that awkward middle ground in which it's like, yeah, I mean, it tries to cash in on the popularity of dinosaurs because people would just love dinosaurs, but everything about it is like, you take a simple book premise and then you just try to add in a whole bunch of stuff in it that just doesn't work.
Exactly, yeah, and so unfortunately, everybody, I think, if you're expecting a really good score, you're about to be very, very disappointed. I mean...
3.
You're saying 3?
I'm saying 3.
Really?
Yeah.
3?
3.
1.5.
1.5?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, here's 1.5. I mean, if anything, I can't even say that this is a good animation demo because it's not. Because, look at everything else surrounding it.
Yeah.
There's far better animation in this than Way Back a Dinosaur Story. You agree with me on that, wouldn't you? The Little Mermaid came out in 1989. That animation is better than this.
Yeah.
Good grief. Secret of Nim came out, years before this. That has better animation than this.
It does.
I mean, good grief. I mean, could we go down the line? I mean, dare I say, Felix the Cat the movie was done, in the 60s and was released in the 70s. And dare I say, okay, it was really wacky and goofy stuff, but that's Felix the Cat in a nutshell. That has better animation than this.
Fair enough.
There are way better examples over probably the last 3 decades before this came out that are better examples of animation and sound and music and, everything else. This, in my opinion, if this Way Back a Dinosaur Story is supposed to be the future of animation, this is a massive step backwards.
Yeah, it was kind of like that awkward period for Steven Spielberg because, he was really busy with a lot of stuff. I mean, he just directed Jurassic Park, and he was also the, executive producing a lot of the Warner Brothers cartoons in the 90s, like Tiny Toons and Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain and various other things. So, yeah, I mean, he was pretty busy with a lot of his live action and his animation career. And, it's just a shame that Emblemation just, kind of fell apart after Balto was a bomb. But, it's not like we can feel really bad for him because, later on and a few years later, he co-founded DreamWorks. So, he was able to salvage himself again.
Yeah. So, so I guess, with our scores, I guess with me saying 1.5 and you saying 3, so what was it, 2.25 out of 10, I guess we're saying it is?
Sure.
Yeah, 2.25 out of 10.
There you go.
I think you're far too generous, but that's just me.
Well, the reason why I'm far too generous than you are is because I do see the promises that this movie could have had. They just fell apart so many times, and there were 1 or 2 nuggets that was fairly
But the
enjoyable.
one thing I would argue with you is that you see promise in this movie. I see, with me, it's the only way you're going to see promise is if you just wipe the slate clean and start again. Take out some of the unnecessary characters. Add in new characters that no one ever thought to add to make this actually better. I mean, I've got to be honest with you, I probably would take out probably 5 characters out of this movie and replace them with probably 2 or 3 characters, and I guarantee you this probably would be a lot less convoluted than it actually is.
And I would have removed a couple of scenes and streamlined it so that we could actually have better character development and better story structure.
Exactly, yeah, some of the deleted scenes you were talking about before that got to take out of the movie, I put those things back.
I would put those back too.
Yeah, because it gives an explanation for Screweyes, it gives an explanation for Stubbs, it gives an explanation for a few other things that are currently going on in this movie. The fact that you took out some really important story points and you left them on the cutting room floor is absolutely is inexcusable.
But we need to have that chase scene.
No. Yeah, it's just they did this all wrong, and I think, dare I say, probably if we had to compare Way Back a Dinosaur Story and Masters of the Universe, if I had to go back and watch one of them again, I probably would watch Masters of the Universe.
Okay.
And then I'd probably go back in the bathroom and throw up.
Okay, we're seriously done here.
Yeah, I think we are seriously done here. What good grief. We've gone nearly over an hour about talking about this, how awful this is. Yeah, I think, how much time did you give for Way Back a Dinosaur Story 10 years ago?
20 minutes.
20 minutes? There's far more ground that needs to be covered here about why this thing's bad. So, yeah, she didn't originally want to do it. I talked her into it.
No, I didn't want to do this because I did it 10 years ago, and I was like, no, I think done, but then
Yeah.
you convinced me to do it.
Exactly, yeah. So, like, I mean, now that we've had a good conversation about why this thing is bad, rather than, like, shoving it into, like, a 20-minute thing, I think we can safely say, like, we watched this so you didn't have to.
We're seriously done.
Yeah, because I'm borrowing stuff from other internet reviews now, so I think I better quit while I'm ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, let us know in the comments below about what your thoughts are of We're Back, a Dinosaur story. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Could you see possibilities with it like I can, or do you completely hate it like he does?
Yeah.
Please let us know.
Yeah. And coming up next month is actually going to be pretty exciting because we are building up to the Super Mario Galaxy movie.
Yes!
So yeah, this is but we're going to do something fun for once. Well,
finally.
I like to think we're going to do something fun for once. So
what do you mean by that?
I think we're probably going to be visiting some Super Mario stuff that we may or may not have been regretting in our time growing up.
Oh no.
Sorry, everybody.
Until then, everybody, catch you later. Bye.